Does leadership still matter? Recently, I was talking with a client of mine, and we were discussing leadership, realms of leadership, and how organizations view leaders in the context of their work. The team turned to me and said, does leadership still matter? And my response is yes, in some ways, and no, in other ways. Today, I'm going to walk you through three different ideas or concepts on where leadership exists, leadership matters, and ways to begin to think and reframe your leadership to a distributed function, or recognizing how do you identify patterns, seek out multiple patterns in the environment, make sense of those, and then pull those back to leadership processes. The same idea. Leadership does matter. And in the United States for a long time, we still have this, I'm going to say, weird paternalistic desire to have an authoritarian or somebody who is the leader tell us what to do. And the paradox of that is we also don't want to be told what to do. So when we see things go bad in chaos, in complexity, in situations where we think somebody should have known better, we're very quick to blame leadership without recognizing that leadership and people in leadership roles got there and were supported by folks who were around them and with them. I've been thinking quite a lot about this, and this is an interesting breakdown of leadership research over the past several years. This is from a talk that was given by Dr. Nadine Tashibi. She spoke to the Tavistock Institute, and she walked through the historical development of the body and knowledge of leadership research. And we see that in the beginning, this was the 40s or 50s when leadership research began. There was a debate between, are leaders born or are they made? The belief was that certain leaders are born, and these normally were people who were white, of privilege, had access to land and money, and they were believed to be born in nobility. And as we saw new things, we develop leadership skills. It then moved on to this charismatic leadership. So when you think about like Dale Carnegie's work, right, win friends, influence people, leaders have charisma. The thought was that if leaders are made and not born possibly, a leadership skill is charisma. A charismatic leader was seen to be outgoing, gregarious, somebody who would create attraction to them. So Carnegie's win friends, influence people was a really good thought to see this is what leadership was. And the research has moved to a transformational piece. This is where we see much of the Jim Collins work, Maxwell work, even a lot of the Covey stuff on developing a transformational leader. This is a separation from leadership being transactional. I give you authority, you do the work, to being transformational. Transformational is still seen as an individual leader, a person on a hill, somebody who is instilled with some kind of knowledge and skills who are there to transform them around those around them. We've seen a line in the 2000s, 2010s, we've seen a shift to this distributed leadership function, meaning that leadership is now a coordinated element. What that means that we know that there's multiple pieces and multiple things that feed into leadership. It's not a single person doing one single thing. It's multiple groups of people doing shared work and shared leadership, creating a larger cohesion. This is what we see in the Agile movement happening amongst technology and spreading outside technology organizations. They work in complex adaptive systems, and we're seeing it also inside organizations, identifying ways, how do we distribute multiple pieces of leadership amongst the organization? So you've seen leadership's gone from a talent skill process to a characteristic of an individual, to a heroic individual, to a coordinated element. And much of this coordination element and the distributive function are things like the internet. So we have Wikipedia, We have the elimination of the need for experts or critics. We have a bottom up piece to move things forward. And this is where leadership can sometimes be helpful or different. As we're thinking about that, we begin to see that sometimes leaders are not all knowing oracles of information. They're human and they have skill sets or desirable traits, or we see they're able to identify patterns and information relatively quickly and make sense of that. But oftentimes, leaders are in place to be a catalyst for action or a decision. Meaning, if a person is put into a leadership role being the act they are playing inside the organization or inside your church group or inside your sports team, they're there to make a decision. They're there to catalyze some kind of action. And this person is usually identified, or that sometimes they emerge from the group as somebody who can catalyze action that the majority of the team wants to have happen, or the team quietly agrees needs to have happen, but the individuals in the group don't want to take the social pressure of making the decision. Some of this comes back to earlier research in hunter-gatherer teams or groups, and seeing those who were seen as the shamans or the tribal leaders were put there in order to make a choice for the group to move forward, catalyzing action. Another area of leadership is that we know this is where leaders are important. That when someone has the sufficient capacity or they're big enough, their story of the work and the world is different. This comes from deep knowledge of the organization or of what has to happen. This also comes from a lot of my research in complexity of information processing and how individuals inside organizations can be able to identify multiple patterns and offer value to other people in organizations. Part is also is intelligence. So we understand that if I'm working for somebody and they are less competent than I am in the work, in solving problems, in helping me figure things out, I get frustrated. And what leadership is recognizing that I can add value to the individuals I'm working with. And this also is part of a distributed function. It means that you have your people who are in management roles by description of the hierarchy or by the selection of the group. And you have those who are just what we call the informal leaders or leaders without titles, who are there to be mentors and support individuals to get things done. There's consistently going to be a tension inside any organization, any team, any structure between those who are appointed as leaders, those figureheads who are seen to be the leadership of the organization, and the informal leaders who are there to help offer value and move things forward. What makes leadership useful is identifying the interplay between those two pieces and moving them forward. And finally, how the person or team in the leadership role sees the organization and how they articulate what's currently happening helps to create more market viability or opportunities to move the group or the team or the organization forward that would make smart people and other people be attracted to the organization. So we do see that one thing that's effective in leadership roles is articulating a collective and shared vision. Now, think about the earlier slide on the distributed function. This means that we're creating a distributed, connected vision or value for the majority of the individuals to move towards. This is when we say values are vectors for focus and movements. So the person in the leadership role who is there to catalyze action, who's there to help identify patterns and create a viable system to keep your team or group functional in the market, also has to articulate that vision. And oftentimes that vision will be rather opaque or broad, and it will be abstract. It's abstract because what you need to do as a person that's inside that system, being led, being part of the group, being being an employee, being a member, you need to be able to frame your thoughts and values and your ideas into the vision going forward. If it matches, that's alignment, you go with it. If it does not match, that's lack of alignment. You either choose to leave the group or you choose to articulate and create a separate distributed function of your leadership and how you see things different inside that group. And from that separate part of your distributed leadership, a separate piece, you create a vibration or a sound or a perturbation of how things can get done. And that may influence or impact the leadership in the organization. So as we think about this, we clearly know that what we see in a lot of literature is that we think leadership is this beautiful thing on a hill where there's one individual point is. But we all know that that's not true. And what we see in moving leadership to a distributed function, meaning that it's shared amongst many individuals, is that the more distribution we have, the concern is it gets weaker or more watered down. And what the leader's role is to identify multiple distributed parts of the organization that have the functional piece to have authority, make decisions, add value to people's work, while developing a coherent or collective view for the group to move forward. So thank you for listening. I'm Mike Cardus from Organization Development by Mike Cardus. There'll be a link to a longer article about this. Please like and subscribe to the videos. Have a nice day.